Dearest listeners, how curious it is that society should punish the innocent for the sins of their fathers, yet demand they bear their burdens with grace unbending. Today, your humble chronicler brings you the most extraordinary tale of two souls united not by fortune's favor, but by misfortune's cruel design. But let us not rush, for the best stories, like the finest Madeira, must be savored properly. If you find yourself moved by tales of hearts defying society's harshest judgments, do like and subscribe to hear more chronicles from these drawing rooms of yesteryear. And if the hype is available to you, hype this tale of redemption through love's truest partnership. Lady Octavia Kingsley stood at the window of her modest lodgings in Half Moon Street, watching the fashionable world parade past in their mourning finery. Once she too had been part of that glittering procession, her carriage among the finest to grace Hyde Park during the fashionable hour. Now, at 23, she observed from behind threadbare curtains, a ghost haunting the periphery of a world that had cast her out with ruthless efficiency. The Earl of Kingsley's sudden flight to the continent 18 months prior had sent shockwaves through the ton that continued to reverberate with each whispered conversation in Almack's assembly rooms. The scandal had been complete and devastating. Massive debts to various moneylenders, ruinous speculation in government funds, and the final damning revelation that he had borrowed against estates already mortgaged beyond redemption. When the bailiffs arrived at Kingsley Manor on that gray February morning, they found the house in disarray and a hastily written letter on the Earl's desk. In it, he confessed his complete ruin and his shameful intention to escape debtor's prison by fleeing abroad, abandoning his daughter to face the consequences. Octavia had learned of her father's disappearance not from family retainers, but from the morning papers, which had printed the details with ghoulish enthusiasm. The Times had been particularly thorough in its accounting of the family's ruin, listing debts and creditors with mathematical precision. Within a fortnight, everything was gone. The grand estate in Hertfordshire, the London townhouse in Grosvenor Square, the hunting box in Leicestershire, even her mother's jewels, which had been quietly sold months before to maintain appearances. What remained was a small annuity from her maternal grandmother's estate, carefully protected by ancient legal provisions that even the most persistent creditors could not touch. It provided barely enough for respectable lodgings and a single servant, her former lady's maid, Mrs. Hartwell, who had refused all offers of employment elsewhere and remained loyal despite receiving wages only sporadically. The Tun's reaction had been swift and merciless. Invitations ceased arriving. Former friends crossed streets to avoid acknowledgement. Lady Jersey, one of Almack's patronesses, had publicly declared that the Kingsley name would never again grace the subscription lists of polite society. Even distant cousins had written stilted letters expressing their regret that family obligations prevented them from offering assistance during these unfortunate circumstances. Octavia had discovered that disgrace possessed its own peculiar geography. She now inhabited a narrow corridor between respectability and ruin, too gentle-born for employment, yet too impoverished for society. The handful of families who still received her did so with carefully calculated charity, inviting her to quiet dinners or informal gatherings where her presence would not compromise their own standing. It was at one such gathering that she had first heard whispers about Lord Tristan Blackwell. The Dowager Countess of Pemberton, who maintained a salon for what she termed interesting people of reduced circumstances, had mentioned his name with significant glances and meaningful pauses. Such a handsome man, though terribly serious of late, the Dowager had observed, her sharp eyes fixed on Octavia with uncomfortable intensity. The Blackwell estate has been in the family for centuries, you know. Substantial holdings in Dorset and Somerset, though one does hear curious rumors about the current state of affairs. Mrs. Hartwell, ever practical despite her loyalty, had later explained the economic realities that governed their small household. The butcher's bill remained unpaid for 3 weeks. The modista who had once competed for the honor of dressing the Earl's daughter now refused to extend further credit. Winter approached, and coal was dear. "Something must be done, my lady," Mrs. Hartwell had said quietly as she mended yet another of Octavia's gowns, letting out seams and turning hems to extend their usefulness. The quarterly payment from your grandmother's trust will barely cover the rent, and that assumes Lord Pemberton's man of business remembers to forward it promptly." Octavia understood the delicate hint. Marriage remained the only viable solution for a woman in her position. Yet what gentleman of property would align himself with a family name synonymous with financial scandal and social disgrace? Her beauty had survived their reduced circumstances. Indeed, some claimed that hardship had refined her features, adding an interesting melancholy to her dark eyes and a becoming pallor to her complexion. But beauty without dowry was mere ornament, insufficient to secure the kind of advantageous match that might restore her position. She had received precisely 3 proposals since her father's disgrace. The first came from Mr. Cornelius Wickham, a wealthy cit whose father had made his fortune in the wool trade. Mr. Wickham possessed all the social graces that money could purchase, but his eagerness to acquire aristocratic connections through marriage made his intentions transparently mercenary. The second proposal arrived from her father's elderly solicitor, Mr. Harrington, who had offered marriage as what he termed a practical solution to their mutual predicaments. The third had come from Captain Morrison, recently returned from the peninsula with one arm and a modest pension, who had known her father and felt obligated to extend what he clearly viewed as charitable assistance. All 3 proposals had been politely declined, though Mrs. Hartwell had expressed private doubts about the wisdom of such pride in the face of their circumstances. Octavia could not explain, even to herself, why she had refused these opportunities for security. Perhaps it was the memory of her parents' marriage, which had been arranged for financial advantage, yet had grown into something resembling genuine affection. Perhaps it was simply the stubborn streak that had enabled her to maintain her dignity through months of social humiliation. The approaching winter brought fresh urgency to their situation. Mrs. Hartwell had quietly inquired about positions as companion to elderly ladies, though such arrangements would necessarily separate them. The prospect of facing the world entirely alone filled Octavia with a dread she struggled to conceal beneath her carefully maintained composure. It was during this period of mounting desperation that fate, or perhaps Providence, arranged for her path to cross with that of Lord Tristan Blackwell. The circumstances of their meeting would prove to be as unconventional as everything else about their eventual union. The morning of October 15th dawned gray and uninviting, with a bitter wind that promised an early winter. Octavia had ventured forth despite the weather, driven by necessity rather than inclination. The small matter of settling accounts with her apothecary could no longer be postponed, and she had hoped to accomplish the task during the quiet hours when fashionable society remained safely abed. Hatchard's bookshop had long been one of her favorite refuges, a place where reduced circumstances mattered less than intellectual curiosity. Mr. Hatchard himself had always treated her with unfailing courtesy, never once mentioning the growing balance on the Kingsley account. On this particular morning, she had sought shelter from the wind while gathering courage for the more unpleasant errand that awaited her. She was examining a volume of Lord Byron's latest verses, wondering if she might afford such luxury, when commotion erupted near the shop's entrance. A gentleman had apparently stumbled, sending several carefully arranged displays cascading to the floor in a symphony of tumbling books and rattling pamphlets. The sound drew disapproving glances from other patrons, though the man seemed more concerned with gathering the scattered volumes than with their censure. Octavia recognized him immediately, though they had never been formally introduced. Lord Tristan Blackwell cut an impressive figure even in distress, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that showed premature threads of silver at the temples. His clothing proclaimed his status as a gentleman of fashion, though the discerning eye might note that his boots, while expertly polished, showed signs of frequent resoling, and his greatcoat, though well cut, had been turned and pressed to restore its original appearance. Without conscious thought, she moved to assist him, kneeling gracefully to retrieve a leather-bound volume that had slid beneath a nearby table. As she straightened, their eyes met for the first time, and she was struck by the intelligence and weariness she found there. His were gray eyes, the color of storm clouds, and they seemed to hold depths of experience that spoke of burdens carried privately. Lord Blackwell accepted the rescued book with a brief inclination of his head, his thanks murmured so quietly that she almost missed them. There was something in his manner that suggested a man unused to accepting assistance, even in such trivial matters. His hands, she noticed, were those of a gentleman who worked his own land, well-shaped but marked by sun and weather in ways that spoke of personal involvement in his estate's management. The moment might have passed unremarked, a brief intersection of two lives moving along parallel tracks of genteel poverty, had not fate chosen that instant to demonstrate its capricious nature. As Lord Blackwell straightened, a sheaf of papers slipped from his coat pocket, fluttering to the floor like autumn leaves. Octavia, still kneeling, found herself inadvertently positioned to observe their contents before he could retrieve them. What she saw there would have been unremarkable to most observers. Columns of figures, lists of names, fragments of calculations written in a hurried hand. But months of managing her own desperate finances had taught her to read such documents with uncomfortable clarity. These were not the casual jottings of a man of leisure, but the careful accounting of someone fighting a losing battle against mounting debts and declining income. The realization struck her with unexpected force. Here was a man whose circumstances, beneath their veneer of respectability, might prove as precarious as her own. The knowledge should have provided comfort. Misery, after all, was said to appreciate company. Instead, she found herself moved by an unfamiliar emotion that might have been compassion, or might have been something more dangerous. Lord Blackwell gathered the papers with movements that spoke of long practice in concealing such moments of vulnerability. When he rose, their eyes met again, and she saw in his expression the same recognition she felt. The understanding that passes between souls who have learned to navigate the treacherous waters between appearance and reality. No words were exchanged. The conventions of proper society demanded formal introduction through mutual acquaintances before conversation could commence. Yet something had passed between them in that quiet corner of Hatchard's, something that transcended the rigid protocols that governed their world. She watched him leave, noting the careful precision of his movements, the way he paused to exchange pleasantries with Mr. Hatchard himself, the effortless manner in which he projected the confidence expected of his station. Only someone who had learned similar skills of concealment would recognize the performance for what it was. The encounter left her strangely unsettled. Throughout the remainder of her errands, the painful negotiation with the apothecary, the careful selection of the least expensive tea at the grocer's, she found her thoughts returning to those storm-gray eyes and the unexpected vulnerability she had glimpsed beneath his composed exterior. Mrs. Hartwell, ever observant despite her discretion, noted her distraction upon her return. The older woman had served the Kingsley family for more than 20 years and possessed an uncanny ability to read her mistress's moods. That evening, as they sat before their small fire working on yet another alteration to Octavia's gradually diminishing wardrobe, Mrs. Hartwell mentioned casually that she had encountered her former colleague, Mrs. Pemberton, who now served as housekeeper to Lord Blackwell. The information that followed was delivered with careful neutrality, though Octavia recognized the kindness behind her companion's apparent gossip. Lord Blackwell, it seemed, had inherited an estate burdened with debts and encumbrances that his father had hidden successfully until his death 3 years prior. The young lord had dismissed most of the servants, sold the London house, and retreated to the family seat in Dorset, where he struggled to restore solvency through personal economy and agricultural innovation. The similarities between their situations were unmistakable. Though Lord Blackwell retained both his title and his property, advantages that provided him with options unavailable to a disgraced earl's daughter. Still, the picture that emerged was of a man facing challenges that required more than noble birth and good intentions to overcome. As autumn progressed into winter, Octavia found herself thinking often of their brief encounter. She began to notice his presence at the few social gatherings that still welcomed her attendance. Always on the periphery, always correct, but never enthusiastic, always departing at the earliest moment that politeness allowed. The Dowager Countess of Pemberton, whose sharp eyes missed little, had begun to regard both Octavia and Lord Blackwell with speculative interest. Her Thursday evening gatherings became exercises in subtle manipulation, as she arranged seating and managed conversations to ensure their paths crossed repeatedly. Winter's arrival brought both hardship and unexpected opportunity. The season's end had emptied London of its most fashionable inhabitants, leaving behind a smaller, more intimate social circle, composed largely of those who, like themselves, could not afford the expense of maintaining multiple households. It was at one of the dowager's increasingly pointed dinner parties that Octavia found herself seated within conversational distance of Lord Blackwell for the first time since their wordless encounter at Hatchard's. The dowager had arranged her table with military precision, placing them near enough to observe each other, yet separated by enough other guests to maintain the fiction of coincidence. The conversation that evening centered on agricultural innovation, a topic that had gained currency among the practical-minded members of their reduced circle. Lord Pemberton, the dowager's nephew, had recently returned from Norfolk, where he had observed new methods of crop rotation that promised significant improvements in yield. The discussion was technical and detailed, far removed from the usual drawing-room pleasantries about weather and gossip. Octavia listened with growing interest as Lord Blackwell contributed observations drawn from his own experiments with selective breeding and improved drainage systems. His knowledge was clearly practical rather than theoretical, earned through personal observation and trial rather than academic study. There was a quiet passion in his voice when he described the satisfaction of seeing barren fields restored to productivity through careful management and patient investment. She found herself studying his profile as he spoke, noting the way his features animated when discussing subjects that clearly engaged his intellect. There was something infinitely appealing about a man who could speak knowledgeably about soil composition and animal husbandry, yet maintain the bearing and manner of a gentleman born to privilege. The evening's most significant moment came when the conversation turned to the challenges facing estate owners in the current economic climate. Lord Pemberton, who possessed both inherited wealth and a comfortable ignorance of financial necessity, wondered aloud why anyone would choose to remain in the country when London offered so many diversions. The silence that followed his comment held uncomfortable weight. Several of the assembled guests possessed intimate knowledge of the economic pressures that made such choices matters of necessity rather than preference. Lord Blackwell's response, when it came, was measured and diplomatic, acknowledging the attractions of London society while praising the satisfactions of rural life. But Octavia, seated where she could observe his hands, noticed the slight tension in his fingers as they rested on the table's edge. It was a small thing, barely perceptible, yet it spoke volumes about the effort required to maintain composure in the face of thoughtless commentary from those blessed with comfortable circumstances. After dinner, as the ladies withdrew to the drawing room while the gentlemen remained with their port, she found herself positioned near the window, gazing out at the dimly lit street below, where the occasional oil lamp cast long, flickering shadows upon the cobblestones. The dowager approached with her characteristic directness, settling beside her with a rustle of black silk. The older woman's observations were delivered with the frankness possible only among those who had moved beyond concern for conventional sensibilities. She spoke of Lord Blackwell's situation with a combination of sympathy and practical assessment that surprised Octavia with its accuracy. The dowager had clearly made it her business to understand the financial pressures facing several of her regular guests. What emerged from their conversation was a clearer picture of the challenges confronting a man of principle attempting to restore a damaged estate without compromising his integrity. Lord Blackwell had refused offers from moneylenders whose terms would have provided immediate relief at the cost of eventual ruin. He had declined suggestions from well-meaning friends that he might solve his difficulties through advantageous marriage to one of the current season's wealthy but untitled heiresses. Instead, he had chosen the more difficult path of personal economy and gradual improvement, working alongside his remaining tenants to implement innovations that might eventually restore prosperity to his lands. It was an admirable approach, the dowager noted, though one that required more time than his creditors might be willing to allow. The gentlemen's return to the drawing room interrupted their discussion, but its implications continued to occupy Octavia's thoughts throughout the remainder of the evening. She observed Lord Blackwell with new understanding, seeing in his careful courtesy and quiet dignity the same qualities that had enabled her to maintain her own composure through months of social humiliation. Their second direct encounter occurred the following week at the circulating library in Piccadilly. where both had sought refuge from a particularly bitter December afternoon. The library's reading room provided warmth and respectability at no cost beyond the price of a subscription, making it a popular destination for those whose circumstances required careful attention to expense. Octavia had claimed a chair near the fire and was examining the latest issue of the Ladies' Magazine when she became aware of a familiar presence nearby. Lord Blackwell had settled at a table some distance away, his attention apparently focused on a volume of agricultural essays, though she noticed his gaze occasionally drifted toward the window where snow had begun to fall in earnest. The library's other patrons provided the usual mixture of scholarly gentlemen, ladies seeking respectable entertainment, and the occasional eccentric pursuing obscure research. The atmosphere was one of quiet concentration, broken only by the occasional turning of pages and the distant sound of carriages navigating the increasingly treacherous streets. It was the arrival of Mr. Cornelius Wickham that transformed the afternoon from peaceful refuge into uncomfortable trial. The wealthy merchant's son had apparently decided that the library provided an appropriate venue for renewing his pursuit of her hand, approaching her table with the confident manner of a man unaccustomed to permanent refusal. Mr. Wickham's conversation, conducted in tones that carried further than strict courtesy demanded, focused on his recent acquisition of a country estate in Surrey and his plans for establishing himself as a gentleman of property. His hints regarding the advantages that marriage to him might provide were delivered with a persistence that bordered on impropriety, particularly given their public setting. Octavia's responses were polite but discouraging, though Mr. Wickham seemed determined to interpret any acknowledgement as encouragement. The situation became increasingly uncomfortable as other patrons began to take notice of their conversation, some with curiosity and others with disapproval. Relief came from an unexpected quarter. Lord Blackwell approached their table with perfect timing, his manner suggesting nothing more than casual social courtesy, as he inquired whether she might recommend the publication she had been reading. His intervention was accomplished with such diplomatic skill that Mr. Wickham found himself effectively excluded from their conversation without any obvious slight being offered. The merchant's son, recognizing superior social maneuvering when confronted with it, withdrew with what grace he could muster, though not before fixing Lord Blackwell with a look that suggested their paths might cross again under less cordial circumstances. The incident left Octavia profoundly grateful, though the conventions governing their acquaintance prevented her from expressing such feelings directly. Instead, she found herself engaged in the kind of careful conversation that allows much to be communicated while appearing to discuss nothing more significant than literary preferences and weather observations. Lord Blackwell's presence transformed the remainder of the afternoon into something approaching pleasure. His conversation revealed a well-informed mind and a dry sense of humor that emerged in occasional understated observations about their fellow library patrons. He possessed the rare gift of making intelligent discussion seem effortless, though she recognized the social skill required to maintain engaging conversation while avoiding any topics that might prove uncomfortable for either party. When the weather cleared sufficiently for safe travel, they departed the library together, though propriety demanded that their parting occur at the entrance rather than extending their association into the public streets. Still, something had been established during their shared afternoon. Not friendship, for that would require formal acknowledgement of their acquaintance, but a recognition of mutual understanding that transcended the usual boundaries of polite society. The pattern established that day continued throughout the remainder of the winter. They encountered each other at various gatherings among their small circle of reduced gentility, always maintaining the fiction of casual acquaintance while developing an increasingly sophisticated understanding of each other's circumstances and character. The turning point in their relationship came with the arrival of spring and an invitation that would test both their resourcefulness and their growing attachment. The Dowager Countess of Pemberton had decided to celebrate her 70th birthday with a house party at her estate in Kent, extending invitations to her usual circle of interesting but impoverished acquaintances. For Octavia, the invitation presented both opportunity and challenge. The prospect of a week in genuine country luxury held obvious appeal after months of cramped London lodgings and careful economy. Yet the social demands of a house party would require wardrobe resources she simply did not possess, and the traveling expenses alone would strain her quarterly allowance beyond reasonable limits. Mrs. Hartwell approached the problem with characteristic pragmatism, suggesting that they might contrive to refresh her limited wardrobe through creative alteration and judicious borrowing. The older woman had maintained correspondence with former colleagues now scattered throughout service with various families, and she believed arrangements might be made for appropriate clothing without compromising her mistress's dignity. The solution that emerged was both ingenious and slightly scandalous. Lady Pemberton's former lady's maid, now retired to a cottage on the estate, possessed a collection of gowns that had been given to her over years of faithful service. With careful alteration, several of these garments might be made suitable for a young lady of current fashion, though the arrangement would require careful discretion to avoid awkward questions about their origins. Lord Blackwell's presence among the invited guests provided additional motivation for accepting the invitation, though Octavia was careful not to acknowledge such considerations even to herself. Their winter encounters had created a foundation of mutual respect and understanding that seemed to promise further development given appropriate opportunity. The journey to Kent proved uneventful, accomplished in the mail coach rather than private carriage, a circumstance that provided its own small adventures. Her fellow passengers included a varied selection of commercial travelers, minor clergy, and professional people, creating opportunities for observation and conversation unavailable in more elevated social circles. The Dowager's estate, while not grand by the standards of the great houses, possessed a comfortable elegance that spoke of generations of careful stewardship. The house itself dated from the reign of Queen Anne, built of warm red brick with extensive gardens that showed the influence of Capability Brown's naturalistic style. Guest accommodations were arranged to encourage social interaction while maintaining appropriate standards of propriety. Octavia found herself assigned to a pleasant chamber overlooking the rose garden, with Mrs. Hartwell comfortably established in the servants' quarters, where her experience and dignity quickly earned respect among the estate's staff. The first evening's dinner party revealed the Dowager's guest list to be as carefully selected as her usual London gatherings, composed of individuals whose reduced circumstances were balanced by intellectual distinction or social accomplishment. Lord Blackwell's arrival the following afternoon created a subtle but unmistakable shift in the house party's dynamics. His presence seemed to animate conversations and inspire the other guests to display their most engaging qualities. Octavia observed these effects with growing awareness of her own response to his proximity, recognizing emotions that ventured dangerously close to attachment. The estate's grounds provided numerous opportunities for the casual encounters that might lead to more significant conversations. The Dowager, with her customary attention to romantic possibility, had arranged various expeditions and entertainments designed to encourage such interactions. A visit to the local ruins, a picnic by the ornamental lake, and informal musical entertainments in the evening all served to create circumstances where acquaintances might deepen into friendship or something more significant. It was during one of these expeditions that Octavia discovered the extent to which their situations paralleled each other. The party had ventured to inspect the remains of a medieval abbey some 2 miles from the house, traveling in an assortment of carriages and on foot according to individual preference and capability. She had chosen to walk, partly from economy and partly from genuine preference for the exercise after months of London confinement. Lord Blackwell had apparently made a similar choice, and they found themselves traveling the same path at a pace that naturally encouraged conversation. Their discussion began with observations about the countryside and the historical significance of their destination, but gradually evolved into more personal territory. Lord Blackwell spoke of his efforts to restore his estate's productivity, describing the challenges and occasional successes he had encountered. His account was delivered without self-pity or complaint, focusing instead on the satisfaction he found in seeing improvements take effect. Yet underlying his measured optimism was an awareness of time's pressure that she recognized from her own experience. Creditors might be patient for a while, but their forbearance was not unlimited. The improvements he described would require several more seasons to produce significant financial returns, and there was no guarantee that circumstances would allow such time. She found herself reciprocating his confidence with carefully edited accounts of her own situation. The shame that had initially attached to her father's dishonorable flight had gradually been replaced by a more complex understanding of the pressures that had driven him to such desperation. The business failures and financial reversals that had destroyed the Kingsley fortune were not unique to their family, and she had learned to view their disgrace as misfortune rather than moral failing. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the other walkers at the Abbey ruins, but its effects continued to resonate throughout the remainder of the expedition. They had crossed an invisible boundary, moving from polite acquaintance to something approaching genuine friendship. The recognition was both exhilarating and terrifying, given the practical limitations that governed both their lives. The house party's most significant event occurred on the final evening, when the Dowager announced her intention to establish a subscription fund for the relief of genteel families facing temporary financial difficulties. The proposal was presented as a charitable endeavor, but its practical effect would be to provide discreet assistance to several of her guests without the humiliation typically associated with such aid. The announcement created an atmosphere of mixed gratitude and embarrassment among those who might benefit from such assistance. The Dowager's tact in presenting the arrangement as a collaborative effort rather than individual charity helped to preserve the dignity of potential recipients, but the underlying acknowledgement of their circumstances was unmistakable. Lord Blackwell's response to the proposal revealed both his character and his practical understanding of their shared predicament. Rather than declining assistance from pride or accepting it from desperation, he suggested modifications that would transform the subscription from simple charity into a compact for common improvement. Rather than coin, gentlemen might contribute their practical knowledge and successful methods, creating a society of mutual assistance where the prosperity of one might aid the efforts of all. His counterproposal demonstrated the kind of innovative thinking that had characterized his approach to estate management, recognizing that their shared circumstances might be viewed as assets rather than liabilities. The discussion that followed engaged all the assembled guests, creating an atmosphere of collaboration that transformed potential embarrassment into genuine enthusiasm. Octavia contributed suggestions drawn from her months of managing household economy under challenging circumstances, sharing strategies for maintaining respectability while practicing strict financial discipline. Her practical knowledge, hard-won through necessity, proved valuable to others facing similar challenges for the first time. The evening concluded with agreements for ongoing correspondence and mutual assistance that promised to extend the benefits of their association far beyond the house party itself. More importantly, it established a framework within which relationships might develop without the usual constraints imposed by financial inequality. As the guests prepared for departure the following morning, Octavia found herself facing the prospect of return to London with mixed emotions. The week had provided both respite and revelation, confirming her growing attachment to Lord Blackwell while highlighting the practical obstacles that prevented its open acknowledgement. Summer's arrival brought with it a crisis that would test every lesson learned during their months of careful acquaintance. Mrs. Hartwell's sudden illness, diagnosed by the physician as lung fever, complicated by her years of overwork, created circumstances that threatened to destroy the fragile stability Octavia had managed to maintain. The older woman's condition required constant nursing care and expensive medications that immediately strained their limited resources beyond breaking point. Worse, her inability to perform household duties meant that Octavia faced the prospect of managing entirely alone tasks for which she had little practical training. The situation was complicated by Mrs. Hartwell's adamant refusal to accept dismissal or seek employment elsewhere, despite her obvious inability to fulfill her duties. Her loyalty to the Kingsley family remained absolute, and she seemed to view her illness as a personal failing rather than unavoidable misfortune. Within a fortnight, their circumstances had deteriorated from difficult to desperate. The physician's bills alone consumed most of Octavia's quarterly allowance, while the cost of maintaining their lodgings and purchasing necessary medicines quickly exhausted her small reserves. Pride prevented her from seeking assistance from the few remaining family connections who might provide aid, and the subscription fund established at the Dowager's house party was intended for temporary relief rather than ongoing support. It was during this crisis that she received an unexpected visitor. Lord Blackwell's arrival at their modest lodgings created something of a sensation among the other residents, though his bearing was sufficiently dignified to command respect rather than mere curiosity. His ostensible purpose for calling was to inquire about Mrs. Hartwell's health, having learned of her illness through the network of servants who maintained connections across household boundaries. The enquiry was perfectly proper, given their acquaintance and the older woman's respected position within their small social circle. Yet the conversation that followed moved quickly beyond conventional expressions of concern. Lord Blackwell's questions revealed an understanding of their practical difficulties that could only have come from personal experience with similar challenges. His suggestions for managing household expenses and securing appropriate medical care demonstrated both knowledge and sensitivity. More significantly, he offered assistance that was carefully structured to preserve dignity while providing substantive help. His estate in Dorset had need for a housekeeper of Mrs. Hartwell's experience and reliability, a position that would provide comfortable accommodation and appropriate compensation, while allowing her to recover her health in country air. The offer extended to Octavia herself, though framed in terms that maintained complete propriety. His sister, recently widowed and established in the estate's dower house, required a companion of gentle birth who might assist with correspondence and household management. The position would provide respectable employment without the stigma typically associated with such arrangements. The proposal was presented with such diplomatic skill that acceptance would appear to benefit him rather than them. Yet its practical effect would be to remove them both from London's expensive uncertainties to circumstances that promised stability and comfort. More importantly, it would place them in the same household, allowing their relationship to develop within the structure of appropriate supervision. Octavia's initial response was to decline such generous assistance, though her refusal lacked the conviction that genuine indifference would have provided. Lord Blackwell's patient persistence, combined with Mrs. Hartwell's practical insistence that the arrangement offered benefits to all parties, gradually wore down her resistance. The decision to accept his offer required considerable courage, as it meant abandoning the familiar difficulties of London for unknown challenges in the country. Yet the alternative, watching Mrs. Hartwell's health deteriorate while their financial situation grew increasingly desperate, made the choice inevitable. The journey to Dorset was accomplished in Lord Blackwell's own carriage, a consideration for Mrs. Hartwell's weakened condition that also provided their first opportunity for extended private conversation. The older woman dozed for much of the journey, leaving them free to discuss the practical arrangements for their new life while maintaining the fiction that their association remained purely circumstantial. Lord Blackwell's estate, viewed in the golden light of a late summer afternoon, exceeded even her elevated expectations. The house itself was a harmonious blend of Tudor and Georgian architecture, built of the local gray stone that seemed to capture and reflect the changing light. Extensive parkland surrounded the main buildings, with carefully maintained gardens that showed evidence of both professional design and personal attention. The property's most striking feature was its obvious productivity. Unlike many aristocratic estates that prioritized ornamental beauty over practical function, Blackwell demonstrated successful integration of aesthetic and agricultural considerations. Well-tended fields stretched to the horizon, dotted with prosperous-looking farmsteads and connected by maintained roads that spoke of careful management. His sister, Mrs. Adelaide Courtney, proved to be a woman of middle years whose recent widowhood had left her seeking purposeful occupation rather than mere companionship. Her welcome was genuinely warm, and she seemed genuinely pleased to have assistance with the extensive correspondence required by her various charitable endeavors. The dower house where they would reside was a charming structure of more modest proportions than the main house, but furnished with careful attention to comfort and convenience. Mrs. Hartwell was provided with a pleasant chamber overlooking the herb garden, while Octavia's rooms commanded views across the park to the distant hills. The arrangements for their daily lives were structured to provide useful occupation without the degradation typically associated with dependent positions. Mrs. Courtney treated Octavia as a younger sister rather than an employee, including her in social activities and consulting her opinions on matters of household management. Most significantly, the household's informal structure provided numerous opportunities for Octavia and Lord Blackwell to encounter each other within perfectly proper circumstances. His regular visits to check on his sister's welfare naturally included inquiries about her companion's adjustment to country life, while shared meals and evening entertainments allowed for the kind of conversation that had characterized their London acquaintance. As autumn progressed, their relationship developed with the natural ease that their London circumstances had prevented. Free from the financial pressures that had dominated their urban existence, they discovered compatibility that extended beyond their shared understanding of adversity. Lord Blackwell revealed himself to be a man of considerable intellectual depth, well-read in subjects ranging from agricultural science to classical literature. His conversation was enlightened by travel throughout Europe during his youth, providing perspectives that enhanced his natural intelligence. More importantly, he possessed the kind of practical wisdom that comes from direct experience with life's challenges. Octavia found herself contributing to discussions about estate management with insights drawn from her months of careful household economy. Her suggestions for improving efficiency and reducing waste were welcomed with the kind of respect typically reserved for masculine advice, yet delivered within the comfortable framework of family consultation. Their growing attachment became evident to all observers, though it remained unspoken between themselves. Mrs. Courtney regarded their developing relationship with obvious approval, while Mrs. Hartwell, whose health had improved markedly in the country air, began making subtle preparations for changes she clearly anticipated. The crisis that would force acknowledgement of their feelings came from an unexpected direction, arriving in the form of Mr. Cornelius Wickham's determined pursuit. Mr. Wickham's appearance at Blackwell Estate in November represented more than mere personal persistence. It constituted a direct challenge to the careful arrangements that had allowed Octavia and Lord Blackwell to explore their growing attachment within the bounds of propriety. The merchant's son had apparently made inquiries about Octavia's circumstances, learning of her removal to Dorset and her position with Mrs. Courtney. His arrival was announced as a social call upon the estate's family, though his true purpose became evident during his first evening at dinner. Mr. Wickham had clearly prepared for this campaign with considerable thought. His dress and manner showed the influence of expensive instruction in gentlemanly comportment, while his conversation demonstrated familiarity with topics calculated to appeal to country interests. He spoke knowledgeably about agricultural improvement and rural economy, though his knowledge appeared more theoretical than practical. More significantly, he possessed information about Lord Blackwell's financial situation that could only have come from deliberate investigation. His comments, while carefully phrased to avoid obvious impropriety, made clear his awareness of the pressures facing the estate and his own position as a potential solution to such difficulties. The threat he represented was both direct and subtle. As a wealthy man seeking aristocratic connections, he could offer Octavia immediate security and eventual restoration to fashionable society. His proposal, when it came, would be accompanied by settlements generous enough to resolve her current circumstances and provide comfortable independence for her future. Yet his pursuit also carried implicit threats to the delicate balance that had allowed her relationship with Lord Blackwell to develop. Mr. Wickham's presence forced acknowledgement of realities that their country idol had temporarily obscured. Their respective lacks of fortune, the practical impossibility of marriage between them, and the limited options available to a woman in her position. Lord Blackwell's response to this invasion demonstrated both his character and the depth of his attachment. Rather than retreating before a rival who possessed obvious advantages, he chose to declare himself with a directness that surprised everyone familiar with his usual diplomatic reserve. His proposal came during a morning walk through the estate's autumn gardens, when chance had provided them with the privacy that formal arrangements had carefully prevented. The setting was informal, yet his words carried the weight of careful consideration and genuine emotion. He offered himself without the usual romantic protestations, acknowledging honestly the practical limitations that governed their situation. His estate, while beautiful and potentially prosperous, remained burdened with debts that limited his ability to provide the security that marriage typically promised. His income, though sufficient for bachelor independence, would require careful management to support a family. Yet he also offered something that Mr. Wickham's wealth could not match: a partnership based on mutual understanding, shared values, and genuine affection. Their months of acquaintance had demonstrated their compatibility in ways that transcended financial considerations, creating a foundation for marriage that promised satisfaction beyond mere material comfort. Octavia's response required courage that exceeded even her acceptance of their current arrangements. To accept Lord Blackwell meant choosing love over security, partnership over comfort, and an uncertain future over guaranteed provision. Yet to refuse him meant accepting separation that would likely prove permanent, as her position in his household could not survive the awkwardness of rejected attachment. Her acceptance was offered with full awareness of the challenges they would face. Marriage between them would require careful economy and patient effort to achieve the financial stability that most couples took for granted. They would need to combine their limited resources and complementary skills to create the kind of productive partnership that might eventually overcome their inherited difficulties. The announcement of their engagement created reactions that ranged from delight to dismay among their small circle of observers. Mrs. Courtney expressed genuine pleasure at the prospect of retaining Octavia as a permanent family member, while Mrs. Hartwell's satisfaction seemed to vindicate months of subtle encouragement. Mr. Wickham's response was less gracious, though he managed to maintain surface civility while making clear his opinion of choices that prioritized sentiment over practical advantage. His departure was accomplished with threats barely concealed beneath conventional expressions of regret, suggesting that their decision might prove more costly than they anticipated. The engagement period that followed was marked by careful planning designed to address their financial limitations while maintaining appropriate dignity. Rather than the elaborate celebrations typically associated with aristocratic marriages, they chose arrangements that reflected both their circumstances and their priorities. Their wedding would be a quiet ceremony, attended by family and close friends, followed by residents in the main house, while Mrs. Courtney relocated permanently to the dower house. The arrangement would provide appropriate accommodation while allowing them to combine their efforts in estate management. More significantly, they began developing plans for innovative approaches to agricultural and commercial ventures that might accelerate their path to financial independence. Octavia's experience with household economy, combined with Lord Blackwell's agricultural knowledge, suggested possibilities for enterprises that could supplement traditional estate income. Their courtship during these months demonstrated the foundation of partnership that would characterize their marriage. They consulted each other on matters ranging from daily household management to long-term investment strategies, developing the kind of collaborative relationship that transcended conventional divisions between masculine and feminine spheres of influence. The wedding of Lady Octavia Kingsley and Lord Tristan Blackwell took place on a crisp December morning in the estate's private chapel, witnessed by a congregation that represented love's victory over social convention. Mrs. Courtney served as matron of honor, while Lord Pemberton, the Dowager's nephew, stood as groomsman in acknowledgement of the role his aunt had played in bringing them together. The ceremony itself was conducted with appropriate solemnity, though those present could not fail to notice the obvious contentment of both bride and groom. Their vows were exchanged with evident sincerity, creating an atmosphere of genuine celebration, despite the modest scale of the occasion. The wedding breakfast that followed demonstrated how elegance might be achieved through careful planning rather than lavish expenditure. The decorations featured flowers and greenery from the estate's own gardens, while the menu showcased the products of local farms and the household's own skilled preparation. The result was a celebration that spoke of thoughtful attention rather than mere display. The toast offered by Lord Pemberton acknowledged both the challenges they had overcome and their prospects for future happiness. His words recognized their courage in choosing love over conventional advantage, while expressing confidence that their partnership would prove more valuable than either wealth or status. The early months of their marriage exceeded even their optimistic expectations. Their collaboration in estate management proved remarkably effective, combining Lord Blackwell's agricultural expertise with Octavia's talent for organization and economy. Together, they implemented improvements that began showing results within their first season, as husband and wife. Their most significant innovation was a comprehensive program to build sturdy new cottages for their tenants, providing improved housing and working conditions that attracted skilled farmers from neighboring estates. The investment required careful management of their limited capital, but the resulting improvements in productivity quickly justified the expense. Octavia's contributions extended beyond traditional feminine spheres to include direct participation in agricultural planning and commercial negotiations. Her quick intelligence and practical experience proved invaluable in dealings with suppliers and purchasers, while her social skills helped maintain positive relationships with neighboring landowners. Their success attracted attention throughout the county, with other estate owners seeking their advice on innovative management practices. This recognition led to consulting opportunities that provided additional income while enhancing their reputation as progressive agricultural thinkers. More personally, their marriage demonstrated the wisdom of their choice to prioritize compatibility over financial advantage. Their shared experience of adversity had created understanding that translated into genuine partnership, while their complementary skills produced achievements that neither could have accomplished alone. The arrival of their first child, born in the autumn following their marriage, added new dimensions to their happiness while confirming the wisdom of their careful financial planning. The estate's improved prosperity allowed them to provide appropriate care and education without the anxieties that had marked their individual struggles with reduced circumstances. Their success also enabled them to assist others facing similar challenges. The subscription fund, originally proposed by the Dowager, became a formal organization under their management, providing practical support and investment opportunities for genteel families experiencing temporary difficulties. Mrs. Hartwell, whose health had been completely restored by country living and renewed purpose, assumed management of their expanding household with the satisfaction of long-deferred vindication. Her loyalty through their darkest months was rewarded with security and respect that exceeded her original position with the Kingsley family. Mrs. Courtney found renewed purpose in helping to manage their various charitable endeavors, using her extensive social connections to identify worthy recipients and suitable contributors. Her widowhood was transformed from lonely burden into opportunity for meaningful contribution to her brother's success. The estate itself was transformed through their joint efforts from struggling property into a model of agricultural innovation and good stewardship. Their tenants prospered alongside their landlords, creating a community that attracted favorable attention from agricultural societies and government officials interested in rural improvement. Most remarkably, their marriage became a symbol of hope for others facing similar circumstances. Young people of gentle birth but limited fortune found in their example proof that love and partnership could overcome the obstacles created by social convention and economic necessity. Mr. Wickham's prediction that their choice would prove costly was ultimately proven wrong, though not without moments of anxiety during their early years. Their success required constant attention and careful management, but it was built on foundations that proved more durable than inherited wealth or advantageous marriage to unsuitable partners. The Dowager Countess of Pemberton, visiting during their 5th year of marriage, expressed particular satisfaction with the outcome of her matchmaking efforts. The estate's prosperity, their obvious contentment, and their growing family provided vindication of her belief that compatibility and shared values created stronger foundations for marriage than conventional considerations of fortune and status. As they stood together in their restored gardens, watching their children play among the roses that had been replanted and carefully tended through seasons of patient nurturing, both reflected on the journey that had brought them from desperate circumstances to comfortable independence. Their success had not come easily, requiring sacrifices and compromises that tested their resolve on numerous occasions. Yet their partnership had proven equal to every challenge, growing stronger through shared effort and mutual support. The scandal that had once attached to the Kingsley name had been gradually overcome through their exemplary conduct and obvious prosperity. Society's memory proved surprisingly short when faced with clear evidence of rehabilitation, and their children would inherit positions unmarked by their grandfather's unfortunate choices. Lord Blackwell's estate had been not merely restored, but improved beyond its original condition, providing employment and prosperity for dozens of families while serving as a model for agricultural innovation throughout the region. Their methods were studied and replicated by other progressive landowners, creating influence that extended far beyond their own boundaries. Most importantly, they had demonstrated that love grounded in mutual respect and shared purpose could overcome the obstacles that society placed in its path. Their marriage had begun in adversity and necessity, yet it had grown into something that exemplified the best possibilities of human partnership. Their story became part of local legend, told and retold as proof that determination and integrity could triumph over misfortune and social prejudice. Young couples facing similar challenges found inspiration in their example, while their continuing happiness provided evidence that marriages based on genuine compatibility produced more lasting satisfaction than unions arranged for purely practical considerations. The estate's annual harvest celebration, established during their third year of marriage, became a tradition that brought together tenants, neighbors, and friends in acknowledgement of shared prosperity and mutual cooperation. The occasion served as annual reminder of how far they had traveled from their desperate beginnings to their current contentment. As the years passed, their partnership continued to evolve and strengthen, adapting to new challenges while maintaining the foundation of trust and affection that had sustained them through their most difficult moments. Their children grew up understanding that true nobility came not from inherited privilege, but from personal character and service to others. The love that had begun in recognition of shared adversity had blossomed into something that enriched not only their own lives, but the entire community that surrounded them. Their triumph was complete, not merely because they had achieved financial independence, but because they had done so while maintaining their principles and contributing to the welfare of others. And so another tale of hearts united reaches its blessed conclusion. Love, it seems, finds a way even through the strictest conventions of proper society, transforming desperation into hope and partnership into prosperity. In the end, their success proved that the greatest fortunes are those built on foundations of mutual respect, shared purpose, and unwavering devotion to the welfare of those entrusted to their care.